into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
My awoo. Oh, fuck it. Let's just go. Awoo.
Our needs.
Hello out there in podcast land. Wanderer from Fallout. It's Three Dog. It's Three Dogs. It's three of us, and we're chill dogs. It's Pod Damn America. The Gothic Socialist podcast for Halloween time. To reach the children that are dumb. I forgot all the various things we've been over the years, but it's Halloween. We're in our element. I'm certainly in mine. I know I'm probably pushing that hardest on this show, but guess what? It's happening. Me, Jamie Peck, that weird vampire podcast they have, we're starting a movement to incite a revolution from the halls of gross nightclubs where the dance party from the beginning of Hellraiser happens. I'm Jake Gorez. Hello, everyone. Alex Patak is here.
Alex Patacula here, and I'm one of the dogs, and you get a closer look at me under the moonlight, and I'm a skeleton dog. Thank you for having me.
Anders Lee is here.
Anders Lee here. Bow wow wow yiddy yo yiddy yay.
Yiddy yo yiddy yay. I thought he said yippee.
No.
Well,
you misheard. It's Yiddy. It's a Jewish song.
Yeah. It's Snoop Dogg's verse from Fiddler on the Roof.
Fiddler on the Roof. Except the Halloween, you know what he calls it? Fiddler on the Woof. Folks, it's a Halloween episode.
Woo! Holy shit. How are you guys doing? Do you have any plans for the big holiday this weekend? Have you done anything yet?
I still have to think of a costume. We don't know what we're going to do. Last year we didn't have to think of anything because of COVID. The year before that we were Jeff and Ghislaine. I was Ghislaine. My girlfriend was Jeff.
That's funny.
And
it challenges the gender binary.
That's right. She likes to dress me up as a woman.
Don't we all?
She likes to be a man. So I don't know.
She likes specifically to be Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
That's right. That was my idea. But I don't. I'm clean out this year. I don't have any ideas. I
got one. I got one.
What's your idea?
Okay, so I was talking to my brother on the phone about this earlier. I was telling him he should be Doctor Strange, and he was like, "I don't have a full outfit for Doctor Strange." So I suggested this, and he didn't want to do it, so I'm going to steal it. You just get a normal bathrobe, and you grow a mustache. Then you're Doctor Getting Strange. And you go out and you're like, do you know what I have my degree in? And people love that. They love your costume. They love that you're just wearing a robe on Halloween. It's something that the whole community enjoys. And so once I find out where I'm going, that's what I'm going to do.
Strange is such a weird, trashy guy term. I mean, I think it specifically means like it's like he's cheating on his girlfriend or something because he's getting like a novel new. But it's just weird to like imply to
the orient of pussy.
Your pussy is so bizarre and
it's the perfect Halloween sex word is what it is.
Yeah.
I just assumed it was another euphemism for fellatio. Is it? It's
no, I think it just means like new, like Chris Rock said on that old special, the new pussy, and it would get bleeped out a million times on Comedy Central. It's like the guys who say
he got that reaction Jake was hoping for with the Three Dog reference at the beginning of the show.
Yeah. And you couldn't even hear the goddamn words. Well, I guess they heard it in the room, but you know what I'm saying. Back in the day, all you had to do was talk about new pussy and wear a weird leather jacket that doesn't actually look cool. People would lose their fucking mind. But
counterpoint, it does look cool.
Those 90s leather jackets are horrible. No.
It's one of the coolest things there is. And it makes grown men bark like dogs when they see it.
The guy who wears that jacket is the guy who talks about getting some strange, which is just a... Yeah, your pussy's so weird, baby.
Just combining it with the Marvel Universe character Doctor Strange is what's really getting me. Like, he summons portals to bring out these wonderful ladies.
No, what is a portal if not an intergalactic pussy? I'm sure he loves them for that reason.
Looks like I'll have to get in the goop for this one.
All right, well, we've alienated all the women that listen to our show. Let's get into our Halloween episode. Happy Halloween, everyone. It's my favorite holiday. I love it. I'm going down to Florida to party at the fest. But I've already watched a million scary movies this year. I've got a black cat that's very annoying. I'm living Halloween, baby.
Halloween, baby.
Halloween, baby. Starring Adam
Is that it?
Sandler.
Should I be a baby?
Maybe you should be a baby. Well, you should have had a third person be a baby with your Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell costume. You know,
as in,
they fuck children. That was their thing.
Oh, yeah.
Here's my question.
I don't know if that would play too well, but
I mean, you're already halfway there with is a couple costume. Ghislaine and Epstein. Did they have sex? Like, were they a couple? Because it seems like
they were a couple.
Yeah, she was referred to as his girlfriend. I don't know
for a while, and then I think they moved beyond to a partnership in sex trafficking.
He was so fixated on fucking teenagers, and she was so old. She was like a cougar.
Well, they would have three. They would have three.
They both did it though. That was the thing.
Oh, I see.
And Anders wanted to replicate this for his Halloween experience because he's so twisted.
It was 2019, man. We were couldn't walk.
I just have to say this before it's not relevant anymore, but Halloween Baby is Rachel Skeleton it.
I get you.
Like Rachel Sennett, but she's a skeleton.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Like Shiva Baby, but
Halloween Baby.
And the skeleton's all like hot on Instagram and stuff. It's showing you its...
It's showing you its bones.
Yeah. Whoa.
Oh.
Look at that pelvis.
I never thought of you this way, skeleton.
Maybe I'll be that for Halloween. There we go.
There you go. Skeletonal baby. Rachel Skeleton. Everyone will get the joke. Everyone will understand.
Everyone gets it now, and they'll get it then. What are we talking about today?
Well, I've been having a pretty good October. I had the thing where people on Twitter are insane for the entire month of October kind of happen to me. And so I've had a lot of ideas been ping-ponging around. And honestly, I had one that I think is really funny that I'm not going to do today because there's just no time. I had to pick between a few ideas. So I'm going to do this, I think in a month or something. It's still funny. It would have been very funny to do as a Halloween thing, but if you've learned anything from the following me on Twitter, it's always Halloween. It's eternal Halloween. We'll just do it in November.
Thanksgiving is spooky.
It is.
Find a way to make it spooky.
Turkey made out of a human hand.
This country's founded on bones.
There's that Eli Roth trailer, Thanksgiving. You remember that? That was pretty fun.
It's very scary. I don't actually. But, you could die from COVID. That's scary. Because fucking people won't get vaccinated. Oh. Well, what I want to talk about today is something that sort of like fell through the cracks in a bunch of stuff I was reading throughout the year. And formed into a thing that I think will make a nice scrapple from the cutting room floor of making podcasts about other things. The various meats and hog offals formed into a terrifying loaf native to the diners of the Atlantic Northeast. If you've never had scrapple, it's a terrifying food.
Did you say hog offals?
Yeah, the first time I ever came up here on tour, I went to a diner and I saw this food called scrapple, and I couldn't stop laughing because I was like, that's not a word. And then me and my friends were really hungover and we ordered it, and then we looked up what it was when it came out. It's made of literally made of, it looks like a fucking weird flat meatloaf, and we were like, what did we order? And it's literally like cutting room floor sort of mix and match trimmings. And in particularly
pure grease.
This word hog awful, which I thought was really funny. It's OFFAL.
That should be what strange is.
Yeah, it was very strange. Next time you go into an East Coast diner, saunter in there in your bathrobe with your mustache. Go, you serve strange here? I'm looking for some strange. And then when they
I've never been so taken aback.
Scrapple and Snapple.
You saying hog offals was like the most literary you have ever sounded.
It's so funny. It's like the recipe is like, and then you scream at it in the oven, and then it comes out. It scares everyone. Now serve. But so the hog offal in question here is basically that I've been reading about the Haitian Revolution. I listened to Mike Duncan's podcast about it, which is excellent and everyone should listen to. I also read some books and stuff, and I got particularly fixated on something that I think is kind of interesting involving voodoo. So we're going to talk today about the long story of voodoo and the country of Haiti and the United States. It all swirls together. Voodoo is interesting. A word about it up top. I am not making fun of it, really. I know this is interesting, and this is all sorts of, this is kind of touch and go. We could get in trouble here for being too condescending or, making fun of what is a real religion and a real cultural practice. I'm going to leave that up for interpretation because personally, I don't respect any religion, really. They're all weird and full of folklore and stuff, but also I think it's cool, and most of this story employs voodoo in a really cool way, except for like when as we'll get to, some politicians like try to use it for their own advantage, which is funny and weird and etc. But trigger warning, spoiler alert, hey voodoo trigger warning if there are any mystics listening.
The most spooky trigger warning there is.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, we don't know that it doesn't work. I've heard enough stories that could be coincidences, but they also could not be.
I mean, there's a lot of shit like that in this story. We'll find, and also I probably won't get anywhere near, even though we are comedians and we're going to be joking about stuff. Probably won't approach anything resembling the extent to which all of Western society has already bastardized voodoo. Like, there's a band called Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. Can't do that with Catholicism.
There's a donut shop in Portland, Oregon, right? Called Voodoo Donuts.
Yeah,
Voodoo Donuts.
Portland, and it's they apparently treat their workers
because it's made out of a potato. It's a voodoo donut. Come on.
Is
this a Kanish joke?
No, there's also potato donuts. I may be getting them confused. I'm sorry.
That's what I call strange, is voodoo donuts.
It's not quite the same as a hog offal. On Jake's point about Catholicism, you could not do a band called Big Bad Pope Daddy. It wouldn't. They'd run you out of town.
Yeah.
There are some things you don't do.
I guess there's that band, the Flamin' Popes or whatever, but it's not
Lips.
common.
You sing of the Flaming Lips.
Yeah, what am I thinking of? There's a band with popes in it. Doesn't matter.
10,000 Dead Popes. Is that it?
Yeah, like 10 million dead cops, or whatever that band is called. Millions of Dead Cops, MDC. Millions of Dead Popes. Couldn't get away with it. You'd get a weird phone call. I don't know. Because
you
voodoo
might even get a curse from someone who practices voodoo.
Over someone who practices voodoo would curse you over blaspheming a voodoo thing?
Blaspheming the Pope.
Blaspheming the Pope.
The Pope.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
It's called solidarity.
Is it? What I have been told is that it is Catholic related.
Okay, you know what?
Catholic
Actually,
adjacent?
that's a perfect segue, because the reason I kind of got really like legitimately interested in this while I was reading it is because basically the story of voodoo is that it's a West African religion that found its way into Haiti and then further into a little bit into Louisiana because of various geopolitical things that we'll cover here in the story. But what happened is, because it was the indigenous, or not exactly indigenous in the case of Haiti, but the lowest class at a given points, religion and cultural framework and practice, this thing known as syncretization happened, which is a term for when like indigenous folklore and religion survives either by overtly or covertly manifesting itself in the ruling class's religion. So usually this happens with like Catholicism. So the same thing happens in Mexico, which I talked about last year on the Mexican Revolution episodes, where there's like a Mayan crazy sacrifice ritual goddess called Serpent Skirt that has like no head and is a terrifying lady made of snakes who, if you track long enough, you could see she reappeared as the Lady Guadalupe. And that's all that stuff still hanging around. And if you are from a family that's immigrated from that sort of place and you're still in touch with that sort of stuff, you might be like me and have grandparents that have this weird fucking mixture religion going on with like candles and all sorts of weird shit. Or if you're Cuban, there's Santeria is another example. Well, Haiti specifically played out in a certain way. And so what happened is the purely African voodoo got mixed with the Catholicism that the Spanish and then later the French brought in. And so a lot of this syncretization happened, and they through various different points, would try to stamp out voodoo, but a lot of times just let it happen, as is the case in a lot of these places where sometimes the rulers will just sort of go, well, if the two things can coexist side by side, fuck it, who cares, or whatever. And that's sort of is how it played out to some extent in Haiti, because the end result is what Haitians would say around 30 years ago when a lot of this stuff I was reading was made. I'm not sure. I'm kind of curious what things are like now, but what they would say is Haiti's 100%, or Haiti is 80% Catholic and 100% voodoo, which means everyone has voodoo. Everyone practices voodoo, and most people go to the Catholic Church because it's like this huge institutional part of society or whatever. So it's kind of both.
That's kind of like how Boston is Boston strong.
Yeah. More like Boston Strange.
There you go.
Hey!
Yeah. Oh no.
Gotcha.
Do not want any Boston Strange. Those people are mean.
That's one step below a mean band name about the Pope, my friend. You watch yourself.
So, to answer your question, yeah, you know what? That's actually feasibly possible that somebody would cast a voodoo curse on you for blaspheming against the Pope, because people are simultaneously Catholic and voodoo in Haiti, or at least were for most of this story. And like I said, can't claim
certainly Louisiana as well.
Yeah, well, it gets up into Louisiana, and then it turns into, even a different kind of form there, because Louisiana is such a gumbo,
It's such a gumbo. And it's also gator country.
Mm-hmm. So let's start here. How the French ended up in Haiti. This story is going to kind of encompass everything from the beginning, but I'm going to skip large swaths of it. If you want to know everything about this, I highly recommend Mike Duncan's series on the Haitian Revolution, and this book I read, Papa Doc, Baby Doc, will be another source. It's also got some pretty good stuff. It's hard to track down. There's stuff out there, but there's tragically little, which is why, also why do a podcast about it. There's a lot of stuff that just isn't translated, and there's a lot of stuff, especially about the government, that we're going to talk about later, that isn't widely written about in America because it would make this country look pretty bad. So,
no.
Let's start with the country of Haiti, or the island of Hispaniola, actually, as it was known when the Spanish came to it. I can't remember what the original name of it was, or if it even had one, but basically they came and killed the Arawaks, who were indigenous to it after Columbus arrived. There was gold on this island, so Spain brought in African slaves, but quickly plundered all the gold, sort of got bored with the situation, moved on to Mexico and Peru, and Spain brought, like I said, they brought in African slaves, but a small amount in comparison to what everything else was happening at the time. Because they had killed all the Arawaks, this formed pretty much the underclass of this island. And then you had obviously colonizers living in the overclass. Eventually French and British pirates came into the picture because it was not a strategic occupation or possession to Spain. France eventually took over after numerous boring historical, battles and disputes and stuff like that. France officially settled, named it Hispaniola, and it was split into Saint-Domingue, the west part, which is now Haiti, and Santo Domingo, which was still occupied by Spain. So the same name, but in different languages, which is really bizarre and weird. Santo Domingo is now the Dominican Republic. So Saint-Domingue and Santo Domingo became Haiti and the Dominican Republic. In Saint-Domingue...
Kind of like twins.
Yeah. Like twins. Not even going to do a Van Halen joke there because the moment's passed. So...
Agreed.
In Saint-Domingue, the French institute this thing called the Code Noir, which is where we get all sorts of racist classifications that eugenicists love to obsess over, because they had essentially a complex class system that was heavily racial too. So you had the lowest class, which was blacks that were slaves, and then you had what's referred to in all of the academic shit. There's no revisionism about this. This is an old-timey story, so it's something that would sound weird in a normal American nomenclature, but mulattoes, which just means you're mixed. And
I was told that was the current term until way too late in life.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Who told you that?
My mother.
Oh my
putting
God.
her on blast. Probably shouldn't have said that. Anyway.
Have you ever had a Moo Latte, that the coffee brand? Is that what they're doing with that title? That's fucked up.
I guess so.
Yeah, the latte is mixed.
I never thought about that. So you've got this mixed class, and then you've also got whites, and then within whites you have the big whites and the small whites, Petit Blanc and Grand Blanc in French. And within blacks,
little and big.
Yeah. So the conservative, nobles and stuff like that, and then the petty bourgeois whites. And
Petit Blanc, Grand Blanc. I just want a coffee.
Yeah, and he's wearing
a Moo Latte.
And he's wearing that jacket the whole time that Dennis Leary wears. This is all, terribly complicated, and if you want to read through the history, it's important to go through the play-by-play, knowing all the various dynamics that happen between enslaved blacks and free blacks, and free mulattoes and people that are born free and all sorts of stuff. But I'm not going to go into it because I don't have the time, and it's not the point.
This episode is about voodoo.
It is about voodoo, and I'll tell you what it's not about. Hoodoo, which is also a religion that came out of Africa, very similar to voodoo, but went on a different track. Because what happened with voodoo is voodoo syncretized with Catholicism, and I think if I'm reading about hoodoo correctly, and please correct me if there are any hoodoo practicing listeners listening to the show, angry that I am completely fucking up your religion and insulting your hoodoo gods. Hoodoo sort of went along with Protestantism and syncretized into that, and so there's a lot of it in America, and it's like a lot of it is weird Midwestern and Southern folklore because it's syncretized into like the New Testament and stuff like that, and so there's various like more overt Christ figures and stuff like that going on in it, and there's also like there's a thing called a boo hag, which you need to look out for, which is just like a witch myth, which is just funny, but it's a boo hag is like similar to like a bag lady or something like that, and apparently like still in like South Carolina you'll find people that'll say like because the boo hag, what she does is she sucks your breath out of your mouth while you're sleeping. If you've ever heard,
she gives some really strong strange.
Yeah, well,
absolutely, Anders.
That's the strangest
strange there is as a boo hag.
Yeah. So, like, if you've ever heard about that, like, sleep paralysis thing where everyone has the same hallucination, which is that it's, like, someone standing on your chest. Like, people think it's connected to that, but, like, yeah, no one really knows. But it's kind of all mixed together, and it's all the same thing. But it's called riding, which is what they do, is they ride on people while they're sleeping and suck their breath out of them. So an expression sometimes used in South Carolina is, "Don't let the hag ride you," which comes from boo hag. Which is a lot of fun. But we are not talking about hoodoo, so forget everything you know about hoodoo. This is a voodoo podcast. There's a lot of similarities, a lot of weird candles and shit, but voodoo...
Where do the candles come in?
I think a lot of that is Catholicism. But
oh yeah, we do love our candles, don't we, folks?
Yeah, I mean it's stuff gets mixed like both ways. Like someone like Mayans give you the serpent lady, but then like they also take the candles and they turn it into like, instead of a candle with a saint on it, like in Texas where I'm from, you can go to this place called Fiesta that's like just a Mexican supermarket, and you can buy fucking candles for this shit, and they're great because like some of them it'll be green, it just has a bunch of dollar signs on it, and it's like, light this to try to make money or whatever. And
right.
You can also get one that keeps the cops away. It's blue and yellow and has like a fucking like, instead of where the saint would be, it's a picture of a cop with a flashlight, and you're like, put it in the window, keep them away. So the Haitian Revolution kind of plays out over the same timeline as the French Revolution, and so it's really interesting to read about alongside the French Revolution, because all these things are happening that like the people in Haiti don't even understand, because there's not good communication and it changes all the crazy dynamics and stuff. But early in the mid 1700s, there's initially a conflict between the slave owners and Maroons, who are blacks that had escaped slavery and sort of like lived in the wilderness and were becoming marauders and like sort of organizing to fight against the slave owners. These are the people, if you remember the John Brown episode we did, he was really into studying Maroons because he was trying to figure out a plan, and since he was in, like the Appalachian Mountains in America, it was very similar to the landscape of Haiti, which is very mountainous, so he saw some kind of divine message in that or whatever. There was this famous Maroon called Francois Machandal who used poison to kill slave owners and caused all sorts of like hysteria where everyone thought that poison was everywhere and they were losing their fucking mind. He also was really intimidating and cool. He lost his arm in like a sugar roller. And
oh yeah, sugar plantations, very dangerous.
Yeah, it's fucked up how you get your Wheaties so sweet, you know?
It's all like melted human skin. They put somebody falls in the sugar melter, they go, just keep making the sugar. Our Wheaties
that's
have
what
to
the
have
frosted,
that little...
That's what the frosted...
I'm talking about the frosted end of it.
The frosted mini wheat. Yeah, that's the frosted.
Oh, that's true. Wheaties have no sugar, and so they have been innocent of this entire affair. But mini wheat's not the same.
Oh, I was thinking of Frosted Flakes with the tiger.
Oh my fuck! Can we get a 1 page about what cereal we're doing?
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, it is hard to figure out which cereal has sugar in it and which doesn't.
Grown men boiled alive.
Yeah. That's why the tiger is the mascot, because he eats the guy's arm after it comes out and it's covered in candy. What else are you going to do with it? You feed it to Tony the Tiger.
You're going to do a tiger.
Tony the Tiger, who's wearing his little red bandana like he's from the year 2020. He knows. What does he know? Or is he just gay and in the Castro district and is trying to signal?
Is Tony the Tiger gay? That will be another episode we're doing.
I think so. I'd give him that.
Yeah.
Why do you think so?
Whatever he wants to be, it's fine. He's kind of a furry.
It's a vibe.
He's a furry for sure.
So you think it's a guy? Well, maybe are you saying it's not even a tiger? It's a guy in a tiger suit.
Oh no, I think that he's like, because a fursona is like exists in your mind. If I understand this correctly, we're way out of our depth here. If you're a furry and you're angry at me already in the podcast, listen to me and explain to me whether or not Tony the Tiger is or is not a furry or a man or a tiger or all three.
This is a tough episode for hoodoo furries.
One person is furious at us already, and they are writing a lengthy why I'm unsubscribing from your Patreon.
Now I want a voodoo donut with frosted flakes on it.
Oh, yeah, it would be so offensive. This is called the strange... I don't know. It's called the new pussy. All right, so Machandal... hides in the mountains. He raids every once in a while, and they say that he just gave these incredible, like black magic sermons in the woods with fire and sacrificing animals and all sorts of crazy shit. And he became such a menace and scared the shit out of everyone so much that they went out into the woods and they caught him and burned him at the stake in the middle of Port-au-Prince, which is the capital of, what's called Saint-Domingue at this time. And the local, legend about him, and, by the way, all this, I'm going to be talking about legends and shit a lot. A bunch of this shit probably didn't happen or isn't provable. That's not the point. The point is, what is the mythology, how does that function? So I don't know, just keep that in mind. But the folk legend around him, some people said that he sprouted wings and just turned into the demon from fucking Midnight Mass or whatever and flew away, and it was terrifying. But what the legend is according to a lot of people, is that he turned into a mosquito and he flew away threatening to come back and wreak his vengeance on the French.
Oh my God, but that's what happens. Right,
because so many French are ultimately killed off during the French Revolution by yellow fever. The myth works really well because it's he came back with a fucking yellow fever and put his little mosquito mouth onto Rochambeau's neck and pumped it into him and killed him and gave him diarrhea and shit. Machandal is cool. He's on the fucking 30 gourd coin, or at least he was up until 1968. I'm not sure what's up with the money there right now.
Oh, the good days.
Yeah. 1791, there's another guy, a free black man named Romain Riviere, participated in a slave uprising that happened around that time. That involved a lot of burning plantations down, setting slave masters on fire and stuff. This person was really cool because he was, like what you said, like a mixture of a few different religions. He wasn't even that heavily Catholic. I think he was into New Testament. Well, no, the Virgin Mary is. I'm out of my depth here, but he was really into the Virgin Mary, and he was actually born free and was a pretty well off mulatto. So it's odd that he took up the cause so hard, but not that odd, I guess. But he didn't have to.
Well, a lot of people in that class you do the thing where you pull the ladder up behind you, like I'm out, I'm above them. We don't need to do anything for these people.
Well, that's kind of the basis of the entire like ongoing tension between blacks and mulattoes. Like after they get rid of the French, there's this thing where if you're black, you're looking at the mixed people and going, what the fuck was all that shit where you were working with the French like this whole time, you asshole, So it is kind of odd historically that he was an abolitionist, but he was.
Countrywide Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah. So Riviere sort of went through this thing where, because they were also mixing the voodoo with the Christianity, they eventually renamed themselves Romaine la Prophetesse and took on feminine pronouns and proclaimed themselves to be the reincarnation of the Virgin Mary. And while this whole like uprising was going on, they were burning shit down and then like going around giving these fiery sermons while holding a fucking saber and an upside down crucifix and like claiming stuff like, slavery is evil, it's in the Bible, and claiming God to be black and all sorts of cool shit like that. It's fucking cool. And there's a few other.
Cool. It doesn't really sound much like the Virgin Mary from that description, but
yeah,
maybe there's more to it.
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely doesn't sound like a virgin. You know what I'm saying?
They were all pregnant.
So the French Revolution is long and complex. There's some main points I should point out as we're getting through this. Toussaint Louverture. That's the guy that John Brown idolized. He's pretty much agreed upon to be the hero of the French Revolution. He's born illiterate black man, sort of becomes like the Napoleon of the entire ongoing thing, and does all sorts of insane genius. What do you call it? I almost said warcraft, the craft of war. He's good. He's a good general.
Strategical maneuvers.
There you go.
He's the guy who ends up on top, and he wants to be an emperor to fight Napoleon at the end of it.
Yeah, and eventually he gets got and he's exiled and dies in France. But he's pretty cool figure if you're reading the entire story. Like one of those people in Game of Thrones that doesn't make it to the end. And then he had two generals that sort of, what do you call it? They came after him. One is named Jean-Jacques Dessalines. The other guy, what is his name? I don't have that off the top of my head, but they sort of like they embodied these.
And the other guy,
they embodied these two. I fucking can't remember his name. I forgot to write it down. But the Jean-Jacques Dessalines is like the more important one because he goes on to become the first leader of Haiti. But Jean-Jacques Dessalines was like this hard ass who was, really incredible in battle and a really tough guy and was from lower class and was black. The other guy, I wish I'd written his name down because he's really funny because he's mixed and he's works in restaurants, but he becomes this like great general because he is just working in these like restaurants, and then he just translates that into war. So he becomes this like sort of like
today we're serving up some pain. Yeah. He says.
Well, he's like a bougie guy, but so you got these two guys. Like one guy's like this bloodthirsty fucking maniac, I keep going back to Game of Thrones, like the Mountain or something, or the Hound, and then you've got this other guy who's like Vega from Street Fighter or something. He's like a fancy guy. So anyway, this whole thing plays out. It's long and complex, like I said. Jean-Jacques Dessalines ends up finally, after fucking, I mean, at one point he's fighting for the French because there's all these different moving parts, and the question of the French Revolution near the end, if you're on the side of Haiti, is trying to figure out who is trying to impose slavery back on people after Louverture has kind of like freed people and stuff. And you're in this precarious situation where it's like, we're not quite to freedom. Like there's still like this weird agrarian economy going on. But, you know, if you, like, he was fighting for the French because the French were trying to convince him. I think that the British were like, no, they're trying to bring back slavery. And then the British were doing the same thing to the French. But it turns out, especially as the French Revolution was sort of going on and on and on, and all, you know, all these ideas were coming out from the Declaration of the Rights of Man and all this stuff and all this like Enlightenment thought. For a while, it seemed like that shit might leak down there and there might be an extension of it to this situation with obvious outcomes. But
right, that sweet window where they freed all the slaves before they were like, oh, right, for money, and then they enslaved all the slaves.
Basically, and when the end of the French Revolution, if you know how it sort of plays out, there's like this fucking crazy conservative swing back in the other direction for a while, and there's actually like French Proud Boys kind of for a while. I fucking forgot what they're called, but they're so funny. There's like these like conservative.
Gendarme.
Is that
proud.
Them? No, that's just means like an army air guard or whatever. But there were these guys after they fucking killed Robespierre and stuff like that who like would carry canes. And they were just like they looked like the guy on the Johnny Walker bottle, and they would just beat people in the street if they thought they were like too left wing or whatever and shit. And so, you know, all these right-wing people start to take back positions in government, and they sent a few of these people like Rochambeau down to continue this ongoing situation. And like, they got more and more racist. And I mean, they did all sorts of weird, horrible torture and shit like that. I think we mentioned at one point, I don't know if we mentioned it on the show, there's like this guy who like, this French guy who, is having a dinner party, and he brings these 3 black women down to the basement. And he's like, these are your boyfriends. And it's just 3 caskets with like human skulls on top of them and shit. All sorts of wild shit happening. French people getting killed by yellow fever the whole time. But what happens is there's one French general, I forgot who, but basically what he does is he goes to one of the islands, like off the coast of Hispaniola, and just reinstates slavery. Because he thinks, well, it's an island. No one will fucking know. There's no
anything goes on an island.
Yeah.
It's voodoo rules down here.
Mr. Epstein. So, but somebody does escape. It doesn't fucking go off. And then basically word spreads like wildfire through the Haitian black and mulatto population. Like, they're doing it. The whole thing we've been talking about the whole time, it's happening. So Dessalines fucking defects back from the French and wages this really heroic war, and they fucking fight the French out, right? It's fucking cool. But the experience like that will drive you insane. So near the end of Dessalines, like when he's won, he writes, first thing he does is write this crazy Declaration of Independence, which just, it's funny because it does not sound like our Declaration of Independence, like at all. It sounds like Slayer lyrics or something. It's fucking tight. I'll read a line from it a little bit. Instead of these dear victims, your alarmed gaze will only see their assassins, these tigers still dripping with blood, whose terrible presence indicts your lack of feeling and your guilty slowness in avenging them. What are you waiting for before appeasing their spirits? Remember that you had wanted your remains to rest next to those of your fathers. After you've defeated tyranny, you will descend into their tombs without having avenged them? No, their bones will reject yours. Fucking tight. That's from the Declaration of Independence, though. It's weird that he put it in there.
Yeah, we're gonna be a Halloween country. It's like skeletons everywhere, and we're frightening all the time.
I mean, on top of yelling about tigers and like blood and shit, he's also just like having a conversation between 2 people. He's doing voices, you know, like, you say this, no, their bones scream back. Like, it's fucking crazy. Dessalines, eventually kind of goes on with him is that he's so freaked out, kind of understandably, by all of this, that as he's taking leadership of the country and going around, he's going to people and just going like, if you have white people, you have to send them to me and I'm going to kill them. And people are kind of scared because, it's an entire country. So there are white people that are just hanging out that are friends with black people and stuff. And so like, he'll do stuff like, say, he'll come up to your, your village and go, actually what I'm doing today is, like a amnesty. So just bring all the white people out and then we're just going to let them go home. And then he just fucking cuts all their heads off and shit. And
you lied.
It's pretty crazy. He's on this warpath that pisses off a lot of people, and so eventually he is hacked to death by his own people, and then begins the country of Haiti, which he officially brings back its like original name. So it's no longer Saint-Domingue or whatever. From there, you have like the sort of split governments of Henri Christophe and this guy Alexander Pétion. Alexander Pétion is leading Eastern Haiti like a republic. This guy Henri Christophe just straight up forms himself into an emperor. He builds a castle, which is kind of a crazy thing to do at this point in this story. And
throwback.
There's just still like cannonballs laying around it and shit. It never really gets used for anything, but he also went kind of mad with power and would like go up onto the roof and then with soldiers and then just like order them to march over the edge of it and die to prove that they liked him or whatever.
Do you like me? Would you fall off my castle?
Eventually you have this President Boyer. He gets into the situation with France where there's this ongoing thing regarding like Haiti and the rest of the world at this point where like so many people, because all these like Napoleonic wars and stuff are going on, just assume that, oh yeah, there was this like slave uprising and they overthrew, the French, but like someone will come and take it over. Like it's just, everyone's racist and everyone's just like, yeah, this isn't going to end this way. So like, whatever. So like the United States doesn't even observe Haiti's status as a republic, which is crazy because the United States' whole fucking deal is that they had a revolution, of sorts.
Right. They're a colony with a revolution. But the thing that is unbelievable is like a slave uprising successfully throwing off imperialism had never happened.
Yeah.
So people were like, I'm just waiting for this to fuck up somehow.
Yeah. It's crazy. And because like, you're sort of in this interesting situation economically, if you're Haiti, you've thrown all these people off of you, but the process of all this has wrecked all like the infrastructure. So like at the beginning of all this, when France was, really into ruling Haiti, there was all these like coffee and sugar and indigo and stuff like that coming out of it that was like very, profitable. But now the infrastructure to create a lot of that stuff has been wrecked. I mean, frankly, if you get rid of slavery, you're going to make less stuff because that's the whole fucking point, right? Is to stop being forced into overdrive as a worker. And
plus you need the supply networks to trade all that stuff, which France has, and you're an upstart nation, so you have to build.
And they're pissed off at you, so they're doing all these like fucking sanctions and stuff like that. And so the economy crashes real hard. And the story of Haiti, the most important thing about the country that is still relevant in terms of, stuff going on today, and just anytime anyone tries to make an argument where you have like Trump with, oh, they're a shithole country and all this sort of stuff is, where, well, all of this is an ongoing timeline. Like, how did this happen? Did America and Haiti start at the same time and it's a race and then everyone went, oh, I went faster because I'm stronger? No, like what happened is, France eventually agreed to stop like trying to take over Haiti again and stop fucking with them and then like allow trade and stuff like that. But under the pretense that there would be this like debt. Like they imposed this like 22 million franc debt. It's an astronomical number, which doesn't make any sense. It's also like debt for what? For freeing yourself? Like fuck you. The whole thing we fought over was, people are not property or whatever, but that's literally like what they were,
and they're still paying that back, right?
I think that they're not paying it back in its original form because
not literally but it's been sort of transmorgified into another debt for another reason, right?
It sort of gets transmorgified because what happens later is the United States comes in, takes over the debt, and then there's no free lunch, right? It comes with all these other things that now the United States wants a strategic position in. We'll get to that in just a second here. So. Yeah, all that shit happens. And then like it would be insane to try to go through all of the presidents and figureheads kind of in the middle section here because like everyone is either cooed or assassinated. It's just normal. Like there's like a joke about like, when you just get shipped off to I think Jamaica is where everyone goes to exile. But there's like only one president in this entire stretch that finishes his term. And it's like no one can believe it. It's like not a normal thing or whatever, right? So
it is finished.
Yeah, that's what he says at the end. And this happens partially because of military coups and also partially because these things called piquets and cacos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's a French words. But this is basically populist uprisings and militias and stuff like that are coming from like the peasantry. So you've got this kind of ongoing thing between, especially kind of along racial lines, the mulatto elites and then like, the peasantry who's black and who's coming from, a further left just situation here in regards to like land reform and stuff like that. And, is organized for reasons that are in opposition to obviously the like class rulers, right? So after the Civil War happens in the United States, the United States decides to recognize Haiti because the big problem was like, I guess southern states had most of the the what do you call it? Most of a problem with recognizing Haiti as whatever.
Oh yeah.
Eventually, so the United States is operating under the Monroe Doctrine, which initially was sort of like a isolationist thing, staying outside of all this stuff. But the other thing that's happening, which we've talked about recently on the show, is in the early 1900s, the Panama Canal is being constructed, and there's all these Germans now that are trading in Haiti. So one of the things that happened when they formed, when Dessalines like declared that you're a tiger and all this crazy shit and formed the initial Haiti government, is what's written into the Declaration of Independence is, or the first constitution or whatever, is that no one who's white can own land in Haiti. But enough time has passed to where these Germans who are coming in and trading and making a lot of money are figuring out like, oh, you can take a black wife or whatever and still sort of be able to capitalize on, all this shit that you can take back out of Haiti now or whatever. So
Germans will convince you they're not white because they're so tricky. They'll come in and they'll just be like,
yeah,
no, it's different in the East.
Yeah, which is weird because
chocolate mode.
They made the biggest deal out of being white shortly after this. But
what is color if you think about it?
Haiti eventually, because of this German thing, becomes a strategic target to the U.S., right? And so, the United States fucking doctrines are all bullshit, and all you need to do is find an incentive to go against something like the Monroe Doctrine, and then we just rationalize it afterwards, right? So the United States under Woodrow Wilson in 1915, who, did all sorts of racist shit, just decides on the pretense that there is so much like unrest in Haiti with people being cooed and, the piquets and the cacos and all that shit. The United States has got to come in, and it's largely agreed that the reason for that being is that strategic acquisition, right? Because of the trade stuff. So the U.S. is basically just brings in Marines and, it's a sham government. Like, they have elections, but in the elections you go to vote and there's only one piece of paper. It'll say like, oh, put a black piece of paper in the box if you want to vote for this guy, and put a white piece of paper in if you want to vote for the other guy, but you only get a black piece of paper. And what they tell you is, if you want a white piece of paper, just go ask that Marine over there, and he's got a fucking gun. And so, like, no one asks the Marine, right? Because the implication.
I'm blown away by the paper color voting system. That's so much harder than like checking something off with a
Yeah, it's real stupid. Where are you gonna get
requires so many more pieces of paper for one?
Less pencils, though.
Less pencils.
True.
If there was a crucial pencil shortage, this would be the one you'd have to do.
You are going to need a lot of scissors for this, I would assume.
That's true. Call the whole thing off. No, so
Just call the whole thing off.
Obviously, the advantage here is that it just allows the United States to conduct sham elections, set up puppet governments. They go through a series of presidents. This guy Dartiganov, this guy Benoit. They do all sorts of fucked up shit, like they evoke something that's still in the law from when France first started up, called corvée labor, which is essentially just slavery, and they just make people build a bunch of railroads and shit. But like, the French hadn't even been practicing corvée labor for most of the time they were still there. Like, it was considered, after slavery kind of bullshit or whatever.
It's gauche.
Yeah. The U.S. also doesn't like voodoo, and so they go around busting up these people called Houngans. I'm really not sure how to pronounce this because I've seen conflicting examples, but basically your village has like a voodoo guy called a Houngan, and because this is such a pervasive cultural, like, religious thing, he's fucking everything. Like, he's a center figure in the community, and so they try to, I don't know what they do to these guys. They just try to get them to stop hungoing or whatever. They also
cut it out.
They also bust up strikes. And eventually this all sort of culminates with this guy, I think this is Setien Vincent. It's either him or Lescott. I can't remember which one. There's a million fucking leaders of Haiti. One of them eventually fucking kills a bunch of peasants with his Marines, and then there's enough unrest and uprising to where the United States withdrawals. And I'm a little fuzzy on kind of why this actually happened, because it seemed like that's never quite the reason, but this is a long, weird story.
What year was it?
Let's see. This is 1930, I think, because they started to
Do you think it's because the entire economy crashed?
Probably. There's a projected date the United States is going to leave, like 1936, and we never actually get to it because things get so bad and people are protesting so much that everyone just pulls out. So could be stuff back home. I don't know. Not really sure. Complicated story.
A real Afghanistan situation.
Totally like that. There's people that are like, he's pulling out. Fuck you. I'm not taking my polio vaccine. Actually, that's probably happening because, I think Teddy Roosevelt, or no, FDR went to visit during the occupation, I think. And he's like the first U.S.
Didn't
president.
have his vaccine for polio.
He didn't. He was anti-vax.
Yeah, he was eating horse ivermectin from the turn of the century.
Now watch me gallop around the White House lawn. Thanks, ivermectin.
Yeah. It's a horse paste. You can eat it right out like an abazabo. So
leaves me fit as a horse and fit as a president.
Ooh, I like that. That's what Trump should run on.
He should change his accent.
Yeah. He's just in black and white now, and he's like a Cuphead guy.
My opponent is a loser, and it's sad.
So This all lays the groundwork. We're an hour in here. We're finally getting to him, but this won't take too long. So it's important to map out how we got here, because I think that's the lesson, right, of all of this, is what sort of social contradictions and class dynamics and stuff led into this. At this point, with the United States leaving, and after having experienced all of the bullshit the United States does to the economy with gutting it and setting up, like I said, like the other thing is, yeah, they took over the debt, but like at what cost, right? They took over all the banks too, and all of these fucking industries that were supposed to be nationalized. And basically you now have a very reactionary subculture of black nationalist intellectuals who have seen enough shit, don't trust anyone, hate mulattoes, hate the United States, and are reading fucking theory that's going around at the time, right? And the movement is called negritude. Sounds crazy. It's a real thing.
It's a different time.
That's not the new Dave Chappelle special. That's from the 1940s.
It will be the next one.
But this organization called the movement, it's in French, movement something, the MOP forums, which is like a right-wing anti-communist black nationalist organization nicknamed the Steamroller, because we're gonna go in and roll over everybody or whatever.
We're gonna make everything flat so everyone's equal, and then we're gonna mess it up again so nobody's equal, because that's what we're against. We're the Steamroller.
Yeah. It's like around the time that all of the fascist movements are kind of taking off in the world, and they're all like, the Iron Hammer, and I'm the Stapler, because we already got all the good tools used or whatever. So they're the Steamroller. So this guy is born Papa Doc, Francois Duvaliers, his real name, was born shortly before the United States ever showed up. So he's growing up through all this. He's seen a couple people be overthrown. He's seen the United States occupation. He becomes a doctor. He goes to Michigan University in the United States to learn medicine, and then comes back to Haiti to fight against I think tuberculosis and yaws. Yaws is this huge thing that's, I don't really quite understand what it is, but people with it seem like they had the stone disease from Game of Thrones. It's like,
it turns you into a stone
an essence or a...
Is an essence?
What is an essence, Jake?
What do you mean, is it an essence?
Well, is it like a vibe that you possess? What is it generally? I don't understand what it is.
I'm sorry. Okay, I looked it up. Yaws is a chronic skin infection characterized by papillomas and ulcers. So people are just covered in like ulcers and shit.
Interesting.
So it's not a vibe.
It's a birth control pill.
It's a bad vibe.
I'm seeing.
Oh yeah. It's also how a Mexican dude says Jaws. Do you want?
Yeah.
Do you want to go see Jaws, man? Okay, so the journal. He works for, or he writes in a journal that's ideological to this stuff called Les Griots, which is like griot is like a bard in African folklore.
Okay.
He reads Marx. He hates Marx. He becomes a black supremacist, and he also loves voodoo. So Francois Duvalier becomes known as Papa Doc during this time when he's a doctor, though, and he's a doctor. Everyone likes him. He's curing this disease that's killing people all over the country. Pretty cool guy, right?
I love him.
So he eventually works his way into politics after that last president, Lescott. They have an assembly election. So they still don't have like proper elections. They have like assembly elections at this point, and, you know, various interim governments and like siege governments and stuff to just keep things kind of floating until we get to wherever the fuck we're going, and everything's always in flux. And so there's this guy, Calixte, I think is how you pronounce it. It's with an X in it. He's a hardcore
awesome.
anti-communist. Papa Doc backs him. You know, he hopes he's going to win, but he doesn't. Instead,
I love the X in his name.
I know. Don't Calixte. Come on. Well, actually, don't come on. He's horrible. So
come on.
He loses to this guy named Estime, who's black and who is like a moderate. He's
a double threat.
Kind of in the middle of the two things that are happening at the time, which are far right-wing fascist shit, and there's communism going on, or communist thought, at least, in like trade unions and stuff like that. So Estime is like a weird middle of the road pod save Haiti guy, and what he does is he includes some communists in his cabinet, but he also hires like Duvalier, who's in the steamroller and shit, and he's like gonna bring everyone together, you know. It's one of those guys. But
I bet that works out really well, Jake.
Yeah, it doesn't.
That's why Haiti's doing so well today.
Eventually, this is like really just immediately one of those two things wins out ideologically and power-wise, and he has to ban communism, and his presidency doesn't last long. It's followed by this guy Magloire, who is first directly elected president. Or he's the first directly elected president, but I don't think they even had like I think it was still you have to be a man to vote and all this crazy shit, right? So better not all the way there. He swings back in the conservative direction, and when this happens, Duvalier thinks that like something's going down. Like he thinks because he was openly kind of a fascist or like in the MOP, and he was in the government. He goes into hiding because he just thinks he's going to get assassinated. He doesn't. He's fine. The presidency of Magloire is like this fancy veneer where they fucking invite. This isn't like we're getting into the 50s now. He has like Nixon come and hang out. He goes to the United States. 50s. You know, but the economy is failing, and he does what every Haitian leader has done to this point, which is why a lot of them keep getting cooed. Like there's a good reason a lot of these presidents get cooed is they all try to establish an indefinite presidency as soon as they're elected. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Just such a weird, like your life after you are the head of state is basically a permanent vacation, you know, unless you're Thomas Jefferson and goes into debt, but everybody else like is swimming in it. Why not just chill? I never get that.
It's crazy because half the people in this story end up dying in like an apartment in like New York or something like that. And it's like you could probably just hung out. The one guy who finished his term is probably fine, I think. Maybe not. I don't know. So we're getting into the 50s though. And so like when he does this, when he announces that he's president for life, there's strikes, there's protests, and now there's bombs. This is like a new thing. And or at least in Haiti it is, I guess. There's this far right guy that Papa Doc supported called Fignolet from the Steamroller, who has the brief interim presidency after they oust Magloire, and then they hold re-elections, and you finally got like an actual kind of almost election going on. There's like 3 people involved in it. It's closer to looking somewhat like democracy. And it's between this guy Desjouis, this person Jumel, and then Duvalier. He comes back and he's like, all right, I'm going to run. And it's really kind of conspicuous and mysterious why he's able to campaign so much, because there's like military crackdown on campaigning for some reason, but not with Papa Doc. And so something's going on behind the scenes where he's a military guy, you know? And he's elected in a huge landslide, beats the other 2 guys by pretty big numbers. Not huge, but big enough. On September 22nd. And then he's inaugurated on October 22nd. And I'm not sure if it's because of this or if he already was, and then this further catalyzes it, but he becomes obsessed with the number 22 after this. And he just starts putting 22 into everything. Everything he does is on the 22nd day of the month, like everything that he wants.
Taylor Swift song?
Yeah. And he sort of, starts off kind of chill, and then immediately, like a couple months into his presidency, which everyone, by the way, is like, the doctor, like, oh, cool, this guy's gonna be like chill for once,
I want to sit on his lap.
Yeah, like they all liked him because of the yaws stuff. He unleashes these guys who he had been sort of like collecting, who were he's been going around forming a gang of like beggars, like poor black guys from like cities and stuff, from these like slums, called the Cagulards. And he has them bust up strikers, and like one of his opponents sort of does this thing where they organize like this form of a strike, like this kind of bougie form of a strike, Jumel, where they're going to shut down all of these shops and not do business, for the the owners are going to shut them down. And so he just sets the fucking Cagulards on them and kills a fuck ton of people. And he also like
Papa.
Yeah, and everyone's like, Papa, no, what the fuck are you doing? He's just insane. And he steals a bunch of weapons from the army. Now, this, people say, is why all of this worked. Because everyone got cooed up until him, but you get cooed by the army. So, like, it doesn't matter you win politically an election. If the army doesn't fucking want this shit to be happening, like, you go tap them on the shoulder and they're like, all right, they're like the bouncer. You know what I mean? Like, they'll come in and like, all right, I'll fucking take care of it. And this is still kind of a big idea in like ML shit, honestly, is like, this is the missing ingredient. Everyone says, how would you do a coup now? And it's right. Like, you gotta fucking get the army going. But what he does is he immediately just goes to the armory and he steals all the weapons and he puts them in the basement of the fucking presidential palace. So now he just has this like golden key to the palace.
Can we just talk about how that is such a pop-up move, is to take your phone and put it in his drawer?
Yeah, oh my God, Papa.
Papa, that's my gun.
Yeah. He fucking scares away his opponents, intimidates them. He cancels the May Day of that year, very symbolically telling you what's coming, and he effectively kills all the unions by 1960. And this is where shit gets fucking crazy. This is why the whole point of this story is kind of leading up to this. This is my favorite part. He replaces military power because he's like alienated the military, and he realizes he needs to like not rely on a military that he's in a dynamic like conflict with, right? So he creates this fucking gang called the Tonton Macoots. Tonton Macoot in Creole is the name of like a boogeyman called Uncle Gunnysack. And
Uncle Gunnysack.
The reason they're called the Tonton Macoots is because they were the Cagulards, the people he was using. But as they sort of become a thing and he gets uniforms for them and stuff, they become so terrifying that like people call them the Tonton Macoot. Because it's like, they're coming to get you, because the legend of Tonton Macoot is that he puts you in his sack and then he eats you for breakfast the next day. And he's a terrifying fucking whatever, folkloric demon.
So what Tauntauns from Star Wars are named after?
I fucking hope not.
Empire State Strikes Back?
They share very little in common with the Tonton Macoot.
All right.
Yeah, no bag.
Yeah, where's their bag, honey? Andrew's rolling his goddamn eyes.
No, I was trying to think of where the bag is. I was trying to think. I think they.
I was looking around for the bag. It's not over there.
So, Tonton Macoots are now a thing. They're a militia. They're a gang. They're a cult. They're fucking everything. Because they also have like the voodoo going on too. Because a big like kind of motivator, and the reason he won the election, arguably at least, is because people were like, the peasantry were resentful of the mulatto elite. And there's sort of a forming black middle class that is also, you know, resentful of the elite. And part of what's been happening with all of these people that operate at the top of society as the go-betweens between like the United States or the French or the fucking Pope or all these white people coming from other countries is that they keep pushing down stuff like voodoo, which is like a black religion. Like he talks about it a lot and it's like, this is something it's 100% ours and not theirs or whatever. And, you know, there's a growing resentment towards all this imposed culture and stuff like that. And so he like cranks up the voodoo, like while he's running and shit, but it's like, you know, it's cute. Like people like it. It's like folklore shit or whatever. And he wears like a top hat and stuff like this. And he now has like this gang, the Tonton-Bacoots, that are like, when you go to a village and there's a hungun, who's the voodoo priest, he's also a Tonton-Bacoot now. So it's both. So he's like, now I've got this network to communicate, you know, throughout the entire island with, and we've taken over this cultural thing that is the fucking framework of our entire way of life, right? And people, you know, they liked it at first before he started going crazy and killing everyone, because it was like, yeah, he was taking it back and instead of being somebody who's like inviting in, like, oh, you know, people who want to convert us to fucking Catholicism or whatever. But then it all just goes insane.
We all liked the boogeyman, but then we saw his gunny sack.
So the Tonton-Bacoots sort of form up. Their head is this guy named Clement Barbeau. And Clement Barbeau is such a great assassin that they call him the Muffler, because he's quiet, you know?
Oh, like the car's muffler.
Yeah. There's another one named Luckner Cambronne, who Luckner Cambronne's thing is that he immediately started up this scam where he sold Haitian blood to the United States. So he just marked it up like he, you know, paid people very little for their blood and then sold it to as a higher price to U.S. medicine. So they called him the Vampire of the Caribbean because of all the blood. And also they kind of think he might have exacerbated the AIDS crisis later on by doing this.
Yikes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Happy Halloween, folks.
There's also this guy named Francois Benoit, who's just like a really good marksman. And there's a couple other these people in this like motley crew. I mean, there's like a woman named fucking Madame Max, whose thing is she tortures people and like mutilates their genitals and shit. And like they're fucking terrifying. They're like driving spikes through people's like ball sacks and shit in these basements while they're torturing them.
What the hell? That's
in the movie Serpent and the Rainbow, if you ever watch, which takes place during all this near the end. Wes Craven made a really great movie actually that takes place during Baby Doc, the son, and near the end of it actually, and it's about the United States trying to plunder like fucking pharmaceuticals and stuff, but it's also a Wes Craven horror movie. It's really good. Let's see. 1958, U.S. mercenaries and some former officers consisting of... I wrote that wrong. So some U.S. mercenaries and some former Haitian military officers try to overthrow Papa Doc. And this is the first time anyone's really taken a stab at him. They do this by riding a boat to the island, getting into a Jeep. The Jeep breaks down and they have to get on this thing called a tap-tap, which is like the buses that go between villages. It's how everyone gets around. And through all of this, word gets back to Papa Doc that someone's going to try to overthrow him. And he immediately runs to like get the fuck out, like starts figuring out how to exile himself to like Puerto Rico. I can't remember which island. But he's like halfway out the door, and then they show, because he doesn't know how many there are. He thinks like, oh, it's finally happening. Like they're just going to come raid down on me or whatever. And then he figures out when one of them goes out for cigarettes that it's only 8 people and he massacres the shit out of them. So he was like immediately like, okay, jig's up. And then he's like surprised, like, oh, I did it. I overthrew the coup attempt or whatever. And
oh no, imposter syndrome is ravaging Haiti.
Well, not anymore. Now he's very confident in himself. So in 1959, though, he has a fucking heart attack. And he has this heart attack. And something important to note about this is you might be wondering, like, what's going on with the United States at this point? There's just like rising somebody we would call a dictator, you know? And the thing is, he's still fine with them because, how do I explain this, right? So it's strategic, right? The United States for a while was, we're going to kind of occupy Haiti to get the Germans out. Well, now the Cold War is in effect and Castro is just taking over Cuba. So they have this thing with Papa Doc, where he's an anti-communist. So the United States is like, well, as long as you're an anti-communist and you continue killing Cubans, do whatever the fuck you want.
We love what you're doing over there, Papa.
So
more spikes, we say.
He has a heart attack in 1959 and is treated by United States doctors from Guantanamo. Like, they rush over to save his life. And when you see this story told, and like I watched like a documentary on one of those history channels, like Most Evil Dictators thing or whatever, where they just, you know, have this weird myopic worldview and they talk about like, you know, people we like even sometimes as dictators, like Lenin and Mao and stuff like that. And like the way they explain it through the Western lens is that he just realized that he could say he's anti-communist to get more money out of them, but really he isn't. But he's like a fucking fascist. He's like clearly like anti-communist. He's been killing communists and like busting up unions and shit like that. And so,
why would the History Channel lie to us this way?
Like, case in point, the United States saved his life rather than just letting him die. Because, you know, the next thing that could have happened is a fucking leftist could have taken over. And that would have been, you know, against our interests in the Cold War or whatever.
Right.
So he saved his fucking life, but then he goes into a diabetic coma, right? And when he's in a diabetic coma, he's in it for 4 fucking months. And his point man, Clement Barbeau, the muffler, takes over while he's in the coma. And Cuba attempts a coup, but while he's like under, but the United States intervenes and helps the military fight off the Marxists, the Cubans, you know? And eventually he comes out of the coma, but now he's lost his fucking mind. And this is where Papa Doc like becomes Papa Doc. He starts believing himself to be the voodoo figure Baron Samedi and starts acting like Baron Samedi, like in public.
From James Bond.
Right. If you've ever played 007, he's a character in GoldenEye because he's in a James Bond movie, Live and Let Die. So Baron Samedi, the thing about Baron Samedi, you gotta understand, is one of the reasons that voodoo meshes so well and does not conflict with Catholicism, and they allow voodoo to live alongside it, is that they're both monotheistic. There's like a creator god in voodoo, and then underneath him there's these things called loas, L-O-A, loa, and they're basically like, they occupy the same realm as saints, so they syncretize real well with Catholicism. And fucking Baron Samedi, you know, he's who's he syncretized with? Saint Martin de Porres, whoever the fuck that is. But he's also like this thing called a psychopomp. So psychopomp is a term in mythology for it's like an archetype. Every religion, every culture kind of has one, which is the thing that guides you from the land of the living to the dead. So like the River Styx guy or the Grim Reaper. Baron Samedi rules over the graveyard and decides whether or not you like go to the land of the dead. But because Baron Samedi is from this, Haitian voodoo that's like all mixed up with like piracy and rum and Catholicism and all sorts of wild shit. It's pretty cool. Like he's he's basically this undead guy that is known for cracking really crude jokes. This is another reason I think it's fine to joke about him. His thing is that he makes fucked up jokes. He's always drinking rum, smoking cigars. He wears a fucking top hat, and he's like in a bunch of video games and shit. Like you can look him up. He's a this is a zombie gambler.
He's in Smite.
Turn of the century guy.
Smite.
Yeah, he's in Smite. He is the head of the Gede family, which is like a family of Loas that all kind of work for him. Their leader is a guy named Papa Gede, who is he's the first man who ever died, and he's kind of like the good version of Baron Samedi. He's a short, dark man with a high hat on his head who likes to smoke cheap cigars and eat apples. He waits at the crossroads to take souls into the afterlife. He is considered the good counterpart to Baron Samedi. If a child is dying, Papa Gede is prayed to. It is believed that he will not take a life before its time, and that he will protect the little ones. He has a very crass sense of humor, a divine ability to read others' minds, and the ability to know everything that happens in the world of the living and the dead. Crazy. He's also in kind of a trio with another guy named Baron Criminel, who's the Baron of Criminals, and there's another one named Baron Cemetery, the Baron of the Cemetery. Another one named Baron Lacroix, spelled like the seltzer. Yeah. He guards the tombstones, which are often the shapes of crosses, like Lacroix.
Lacroix.
Baron Samedi's thing.
It's not LaCroix, as some people think.
I don't think so. I think, especially in Haitian patois, it's LaCroix. I think you would get your ass kicked if you said LaCroix. Maybe that's a different...
he did rough you up, bro.
Maybe that's a different Lois. LaCroix. He's the Baron of Seltzer and feeling good and no longer being an alcoholic. He's
for only $1.
He's always drinking a seltzer instead of the rum like the other guys.
That's a secret.
So let's go back to Baron Samedi though. He spends most of his time inside the invisible realm of voodoo spirits. He's notorious for his outrageous behavior, swearing continuously, making filthy jokes. He's married to another powerful spirit named Maman Brigitte, often chases after mortal women. He loves smoking and drinking and is rarely seen without a cigar in his mouth or a glass of rum in his bony fingers. Baron Samedi can usually be found at the crossroads between the living and dead, and he wears dark glasses and a top hat. And you have to sort of give like gifts to these guys sometimes on holidays and shit like that is how it works. So sometimes he just likes that you wear black or white or purple, but also he's may simply ask for gifts of, like, you would leave these out in like a graveyard if you want to ensure that your soul makes it to the grave. Cigars, rum, black coffee, grilled peanuts, or bread. Yeah, he loves it. And people will do all sorts of stuff like carry grave dirt around to make various things happen in this religion. It's fucking cool. He also... What's the deal? What was the last thing with him? Oh, and a lot of this... So, the other thing about this is that, like... there are, like, rumors about zombies. Like, the zombie mythology comes from Haiti, because stuff would happen, like... people would just get enslaved, and then the explanation would be like, oh, he turned me into a zombie or whatever. And the thing that movie is about Serpent on the Rainbow is about this one famous case of a guy who they think the story is what they think happened to him is that he was put under with like pufferfish toxin and toad venom, and it can put you to a state where like they'll diagnose you dead, and then the person who poisoned him like that brought him back out of the grave after he had done that, and then it was like, everyone thinks you're dead, now you have to farm sugar for me or whatever. This sort of
that sucks.
Folklore is going around is what I'm saying. So there's, there's jokes and stuff people will tell about like whether you make it to the grave or not, or you make it there safely and stuff. And he becomes this. Baron Samedi's like the most popular Loa, and so he's like, all right, I'm going to make my people like me by putting on these black glasses and this top hat. And he also changes the way he speaks because Baron Samedi has plugs in his noses because he's a corpse. So he starts talking like this, like with this, like nasally or whatever. I'm
out looking for strange.
Yeah. And he just becomes more megalomaniacal, which is like, this is one of those things historically that's impossible to suss out, how much of it is it that he has brain damage from this thing that happened to him? How much of it is that he thinks he's Baron Samedi? How much of it, as a lot of people say, he was an atheist? He's just doing this purely to propagandize because he thinks it'll make people like him,
Well, I hope that is not the case.
It's impossible to say. So he's, but he becomes very megalomaniacal, and he does things like in 1964, he gives a speech that says, I am an immaterial being. Bullets cannot hurt me. This is why he's giving like the State of the Union or whatever. And starts referring to himself as the master of the crossroads, the man who sees forever, the Haitian floating. Just like, don't even know, right?
Wow. It's going to be a great year for politics.
He eventually finds his opponent from the election, Jumel, who's been killed. He digs up his corpse, supposedly. This one I'm not too sure about whether it actually happened, just because some of the sources on these are a little wonky. But they say that he dug up the corpse, he chopped his head off, and he took a bath with it while he was wearing his top hat.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Take off your hat. It's disrespectful.
And because he's cultivating all of this, people start to joke about how the Tauntauns are zombies, but like, they're scary. I mean, who knows what's going on, right? The 22nd of October, he holds more sham elections, making him president for life on the 22nd, like is his favorite number. And he just starts listing off the names of like the last 5 presidents. Lescott, Vincent, Magloire. They all become me. From Francis Duvalier.
Oh,
all right, I found it. So I'm reading from this book, Papa Doc, that I read for this. More bizarre still was the Duvalierist version of the Lord's Prayer, intended for use in the country's few schools. So they didn't even have that many schools, but he made them, instead of doing the traditional Lord's Prayer, which is like, Our Father who art in heaven, yada, 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 our daily bread. It reads, Our Doc, who art in the National Palace for life, hallowed be thy name, by present and future generations. Thy will be done in Port-au-Prince, as it is in the provinces. Give us this day our new Haiti, and forgive not the trespasses of those anti-patriots who daily spit upon our country. So, just pretty crazy. He just
also kind of Catholic-y, a little bit.
Well, what the thing is, Catholicism is still happening. It's still allowed to happen, but he's like doing stuff like changing the prayers with his name in it instead of like Jesus and shit.
Oh, damn. Wow.
Yeah.
That's ballsy.
Which is why he eventually gets excommunicated from the Catholic Church, which is crazy because he like still is going to church after this. He just tells them like, fuck you.
He's just saying his own name in place of God.
Yeah.
When they're praying in church.
And he installs a neon sign outside of the palace that says, it's in French, but in French it translates to, I am the Haitian flag, one and indivisible. He changes the Haitian flag from, the flag had been changed in the French Revolution from red, white, and blue to cutting out the white to symbolically, you get the message there. When Dessalines won to, so it was blue and red. He changed it to black and red just to make it more like black nationalist and evil looking.
Da, na, na. It's cool to have a president who's openly like, I'm evil and a zombie.
It's fucking tight. I mean, the zombie thing is because it's weird because, like, I guess people are still afraid of them because they call the Tauntauns them, but it's also like, it is like folkloric, like people like it. So he's doing it to try to make people like, you like a zombie, right? I'm dead. So he wrecks the entire country. Like, everything's already been so bad to this point, and because of him and his son, it's just so much worse. It's a really tragic story. Like, the economy is just garbage. So he starts implementing things like this pension scam. He institutes a pension that you get all this like money back when you turn 65. And the reason he does it is because the life expectancy is 40 and no one lives to 65. He basically reinstitutes a form of slavery by selling workers to the Dominican Republic to work for abysmal rates, like 50 cents a day as sugar farmers. And you kind of can't get out of it. At one point, he deducted $15 from all civil servants, but in return gave them a copy of his book, Duvalier's Essential Works. So
that's going to be much like getting dinner with Jay-Z, an investment that pays back dividends at the end of the day.
Yeah, totally. Because it's like his weird art of the deal, like, my way, how to, self-actualize yourself. First, become an undead zombie.
Spookify.
Let's see. Oh, after he comes out of his coma, he gets into a battle with Clement Barbeau, the muffler, because he doesn't trust him since he's been running the country while he was in a coma. Like, Trump kind of had this going on. I think I forgot to mention this in this episode. We talked about Trump a while back, but like, apparently when he was making people sing for him and stuff, he got a colonoscopy, which is in that thing that woman wrote about, just exposed a bunch of weird shit about the Trump administration. And you traditionally go under for a colonoscopy, but Trump refused anesthetic because he didn't want Pence to step in his place, apparently. So this is a thing.
Ooh.
So I guess the idea, according to that writer, was, this is common among megalomaniacs and dictators and stuff like that, which tracks with this story because he no longer trusted his friend Clement Barbeau after he got out of his coma, and he fired him. And then Clement Barbeau started like the lore about all this. The legends are that he would like do stuff like threaten him from afar and call him on the phone and say like, how's your coffee taste this morning? Pretty good. Knowing it's morning and he's drinking coffee, and then fucking Papa Doc would spit out the coffee. But sacre bleu, not knowing whether it was poisoned or not. And apparently,
it was a genuine question.
There was, I was just asking. There's an assassination attempt on the Doc children, the Duvalier children, and the only people that die are like the chauffeur driver and the two bodyguards. And then apparently Clement Barbeau had sent a note to the palace after that said like, I was just target practicing. I hit everything or whatever. Like, won't miss next time or whatever. Something weird like that. Some of this is hard to pin down because there's conflicting evidence and conflicting stories. One of those History Channel documentaries I watched like has one of these guys in it, the guy they think actually did it, which was the marksman Francois Benoit, and he says conflicting stuff with some of this shit, but like he also didn't quite have his story straight, so who the fuck knows. So yeah, let's get back to the U.S. for a minute, though. What's going on with the U.S.? They are supporting this guy, right? and everything's kind of hunky-dory as long as you're anti-communist, and we'll help you, jumpstart your heart and fight off the Cubans and stuff like this. Well, that starts to change during the Kennedy administration, because as we've talked about, Kennedy was kind of different from his predecessors when it came to the Third World, and had some ideas that, maybe pissed off the CIA and stuff like that, right? And so Kennedy started to put a little bit more pressure on Duvalier to liberalize. And right as this was happening, there's this kind of scare in the presidential palace, and at the same time, there's a U.S.-backed attack, like from the was it U.S. backed? Yeah, I think they backed the Dominicans. But anyway, the Dominicans sent tanks up to the border because of some dispute that Papa Doc and Trujillo, the Dominican dictator, have had. And he's like, fuck, I'm finally going to die. Kennedy's coming for me, and the Dominicans are coming for me. And then out of nowhere, the Dominicans, they've had this inner dispute going on with their own leader, and the military says, no, fuck you, we're not going to fight Haiti. And they just stop. And then like a few days later on, what's the date? Let me look it up.
Halloween.
No, November 22nd, 1963. The 22nd. JFK is assassinated, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he's in the palace and he's like, holy shit, the Dominicans stopped, and the guy I had a problem with in the United States just died. Maybe that's how it went down. A lot of the legend about him, the urban legend, is that he had a voodoo doll of John F. Kennedy and he stabbed it 2,222 times. And then Kennedy was assassinated.
That's your whole afternoon.
Right, that proves it was not just one bullet, it was 2,220 of them.
Yeah, or that's how
Very small and quick.
You make a magic bullet with a bunch of twos or whatever. So that's probably like a bullshit, just, folklore thing, because the main reason being that apparently voodoo dolls, that whole thing, is specific to Louisiana voodoo and not Haitian.
Not Haitian voodoo, all right.
But still, the implication that he, I don't know what the fuck's going on here. He's probably doing something at his castle to try to curse the U.S. government. Maybe he killed Kennedy. Probably not, but it's fun, right?
You don't think he drew a line out of respect for the office?
Possibly. Yeah, so those two things happen at the same time. There's also a couple other people that come for him. In 1964, there's these people called the Jeunes Haiti. They're like 13 former Haitian military that come after him. At some point, one of these is fucking spooks, like you can tell, but I can't remember exactly which one it is. But yeah, there's another coup attempt on him. He captures them alive. He tortures them in town square in Port-au-Prince in front of like school children and shit. It's terrifying. 1969, the PUCH, which is an organized communist force, attacks him. So he's outlawed communism officially, but there is communist organizing, and they take another crack at him, but no one can seem to get him. And this attack is followed immediately by a visit from Nelson Rockefeller, as well as a U.S. ambassador named Clinton Knox, who's sort of overseeing all this and just making sure everything runs smoothly. Clinton Knox is really funny because he got made an honorary tauntaun because he just liked them. Like when they give you pilot
friend
names.
Of the show.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically the other things that happened during all this, and the main sort of thrust economically of his government is that they're using this anti-communist position in opposition to Cuba to sort of like garner aid from the United States. And the aid is not going to the people at all. Like they just pocket all of it. And the government's, super corrupt. And the term kleptocracy is actually coined while writing about the Duvalier government, because it's maybe the first example of this, someone being in a dependency on the United States, and then the fucking family literally just successioning all the money away instead of giving it to where it needs to be, and just sort of dodging the United States and hoping they don't notice like how bad they're doing it or whatever.
Spooky.
He builds something called Duvalierville with all this money, which is just like a town he decides to build. They don't have like fucking running water and telephones and shit for a lot of this, but he just builds a town called Duvalierville because he's crazy. And it never gets finished either. It's still just kind of out there. It's just like a ghost town now, where they started trying to build like, God, what did he have in it? He had something really crazy in it, and I fucking killing myself. I can't remember off the top of my head. I had like a roller coaster or something insane like that. And basically what happened is he starts dying, and the last few things he does are this Duvalierville stuff and some maneuvering with the Catholic Church, because he had pissed off the church earlier, but he now sort of like wants to win favor back with the Vatican. And so he writes about it in his book, essentially, that he's like, I fucking outmaneuvered that motherfucker so hard. I did a succession at him, art of the deal. Like, he thinks he manipulated the Pope. And what's interesting is that, so the Pope allows him to sort of have bishops again and everything to sort of like come back into practice. And then he allows the Pope to come visit, and the Pope, when he visits, he goes around in the Pope mobile and he just yells at everyone about how like he roasts the government. It's crazy. And this is interesting because it's all around the time of like liberation theology starting. And to cut a long story short, Papa Doc starts dying. Ambassador Knox sort of oversees the transfer of power to his son, who everyone calls Baby Doc, because Papa Doc. This is the only successful transfer of power in the entire Haitian history. The only dynasty that's ever happened.
The system works.
Well, I mean, dynasties aren't great, so kind of, maybe.
Zombies in every town.
And Baby Doc's presidency is a lot longer and more boring. Well, it's not longer, but it's less interesting. Some main notes of it are that everything starts to fall apart a lot more. This is where you get this thing in like the 80s where people refer to Haitians as boat people because they're fleeing the country.
I shouldn't laugh at that, but
that was like a headline.
They all own boats.
Well, they're all
really into boats.
They're all coming like on boats to the United States, and because of the deals that the United States had with Papa Doc and how they felt about Cuba, if you came from Cuba, they let you into the country, but if you came from Haiti, they immediately detained you and sent you back, and then eventually
this was pre-Castro, I assume.
No, I think this is post-Castro.
Really?
Yeah.
Because they're assuming that people coming from Cuba were fleeing.
Right. They wanted the narrative of like, oh, we are this benevolent, thing that takes in people from Haiti or from Cuba. But if you're coming from Haiti, they were just like, well, America's racist, and B, I think they might have had sort of a deal with the Duvaliers where they were just like, no, you keep your people, sell them into slavery, we'll just send them back or whatever. And so the Duvaliers started cracking down on the people leaving the country But like professionals left, like legally, just to go to other countries and work because there's no economy. So they called it the brain drain. There's just like no, like nobody who knows how to do any, professional jobs anymore.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like something a zombie would set up.
Brain drain, yeah. Is a zombie who's trying to get his dick sucked, and he's like, brain drain.
Brain strange.
Strange. There you go. We found it. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, this goes on and on and on and on. And there's like, even after Baby Doc, there's just more coups and stuff. And it's not until, well, okay. So I'll end on what kind of happens after that. Baby Doc, he's driving the country into the ground. And he's not only like pissed off, he's not only doing all the horrible stuff that Papa Doc did, he's also pissing off like Papa Doc's base of black nationalists and middle class and stuff like that, because he marries a mulatto woman, which also Papa Doc did, but it's for some reason it's just considered way worse when he does it.
It's the way he did it. Where is his top hat?
He's like a feckless leader, because like he was a fail son. He just never did anything until he became the president of Haiti. He's kind of fat. He said he just laid around and partied and stuff. And then when he started having to do all this shit, all he did was take over the worst parts of Duvalierism, and started the only like ray of light that ever shone over this was when Jimmy Carter was elected, and Jimmy Carter started trying to encourage liberalization in countries like Haiti and saying like, conditionally, we will send you money if you attempt to liberalize your economy. But everything was so wrecked that like even when they did properly send money to the towns across Haiti at this point, they were so wrecked that like it didn't even work. Like if you set up roads in a place, it like didn't help people that didn't have cars and stuff like that. Or, I don't know. There's a few examples in the book that I don't quite understand, but they were saying like, oh, you drinking water is out here. And like, there's no immediate effect if you set up clean drinking water, because people are just used to drinking from like wells or something like that. There's no way to like jumpstart the economy at this rate, I guess, is the argument. And also the other thing is that eventually Baby Doc just started figuring out ways around all this to continue to get the aid money without like doing anything, or just like tricking the Carter administration into thinking that, oh yeah, we're giving the money away, but they're actually just siphoning it into all sorts of corrupt, crazy shit. And then it didn't matter, because like Reagan came up and they could tell Reagan was going to win, apparently, people think, for some weird reason. And when Reagan won, it was like right back into this dependency on the Cold War bullshit that America was into. And so Reagan like loved Baby Doc and was like, it's so great how you're, allowing the economy to prosper because business and stuff. And
you're a little baby, and I love babies. The man had a hole in his brain.
I know, man. So things got fucking worse through Reagan, but eventually, long story short, and this does just go on and on and on. We don't have the time. I'm going to end the podcast now. It's at 2 hours, but like, read about it. It's fucking interesting. Is things just fall apart way, 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 way more during Baby Doc, specifically in this town called Go Naives, which is like they said even by Haiti standards, it's like a fucking shithole. Like everyone's dying in the street of hunger and stuff like that. And so there's like a lot of uprisings in it. And finally, the spirit of uprising that had been kind of bashed down through the Duvaliers sort of comes back, but it comes back in this form instead of something Marxist like we would like liberation theology becomes the thing. And so the first, they say like the first actually elected president was this guy Aristide, who was a priest, and he was a radical on some level, and he was elected in, what is it, like I think immediately after Baby Doc in 1990, and then he was couped, and then he came back and won again like years later, and so he's this crazy historical figure. And I think that's a nice cap to end this on. I mean, obviously you could go all the way through like the fucking 90s and the 2011 earthquake and everything, but we would be almost to modern history, and this isn't that podcast. But interesting ending to the story of all of this mythology and religion and stuff being used as propaganda and as ways to rally and inspire people. Which, I don't know. I don't even know if I like the ending of this. I like voodoo. I think it's fucking cool. I wish a voodoo guy had beat him and said, I'm going to do voodoo better. But because he chose voodoo, maybe there's something to the idea that that this liberation theology and the stuff that the Pope was saying caused people to just rally behind, all that symbolism or whatever the fuck. I don't know. I don't know much about liberation theology, so that's for another time. But anyway, that's Papa Doc and Baby Doc, the voodoo daddy and baby of Haiti.
Voodoo is real. You heard it here first.
Voodoo is real. And if you're out there this Halloween, please be careful and carry some grilled peanuts with you and some rum and some cigars to give to Baron Samedi if he visits you in your dreams. That's another thing he does. I forgot. He visits people in their dreams.
I do usually have that stuff on me, but it's good to know that there's a reason now.
Yeah. Yeah. Just if you're at the gas station, get some grilled peanuts because you might need to give them to a smoking edgelord roast comedian with a top hat and plugged noses and black sunglasses who will demand that you give him peanuts, or else you won't make it all the way to hell and you'll become a zombie. Hell, the grave, whatever. You know what I mean?
The grave.
Happy Halloween, everyone. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed and had a spooky time. Let's do plugs.
I was about to say.
I know we're all tired. I'm just trying to put a button on it. I was,
Because you're performing for Halloween, correct?
I am. I'll be at Fest in Gainesville, Florida, Halloween weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And then I'll be in Jacksonville, Florida, November 1st with Anya Volz, who is also on Fest, who I'm traveling with. And my album's out on November 5th everywhere. That's it.
Anders.
At Andersley here on Twitter, Dursley1 Instagram, Redacted Tonight, and this coming Tuesday, November 2nd, we will be doing an election night stream. There are some local elections and a couple state elections happening around the country that we will be monitoring. So tune into that, twitch.tv/PodDamnAmerica. Around 8, I think we're going to kick it off. And I'll probably have some guests on. It'll be a lot of fun.
A lot of hot stuff coming in there. Nothing too exciting for me. You can follow all of my updates on Twitter at the signature Twitter account, Patak Test Kitchen, your one-stop shop for exciting new flavors. And that's all I have this week.
Okay. Be safe out there. Don't turn into a zombie, or do, but if you do...
Who should we curse?
Don't use it.
In this...
Can we curse somebody?
Byron Brown. Let's curse Byron Brown.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't know how to do that, but...
What about the Dominican Republic?
No, I don't want to curse.
Okay, just trying to keep in order with the Haiti episode.
What if we try to use the twos on Byron Brown?
Let's do it.
We'll make a doll of him and then...
Yeah.
Flush it down the toilet 222 times.
Oh, and check out our Patreon. We might have a ghost story episode coming up.
Do we? Do we have one?
I think Anders has got a ghost story he wants to tell.
Well, it's my friend's ghost story, but it's a really good one. But we'll get some people with good ghost stories. That's my idea I just thought of right now.
Okay, we'll sign up for the Patreon.
Well, we're definitely doing it now that we said it on the radio. So, all right, I'll see you there.
All right, everyone. Happy Halloween.